In today's video, I'll be talking about an ironic AI future for jobs and startups as we move through the age of AI. So, what lies ahead? There are a lot of predictions out there, and there's a lot of fear, frankly, as well. As a business owner, as an entrepreneur who is responsible for the jobs of dozens of people, um, I can tell you firsthand just what I've seen over the last 2 years. People coming to me, especially earlier on. It's died down a little bit now, but it's still there. It's latent, and you can hear it in. I can hear it in other people that I talk to outside of my company too. When I go out to social events or networking events, um, either people are just kind of completely, in the dark or checked out. They're just not following what's happening. They're not even aware of things like large language models, AI models, you know, just the AI revolution that is underway right now. Um, and others who are aware of it, there's usually fear. You know, what does this mean for the future? Is my job going to be replaced? You know, am I standing on quicksand and can I do something about it? I think that's kind of the biggest concern is a feeling of not being able to do something about it. What can you do about it? Um, well, as a, I'm talking primarily to, people who I guess are futurists, but also to people who are in technology, you're working in AI, startup founders with these videos. Um, and so why should you listen to me first off? Why am I qualified? Attack. Why am I qualified? Well, this month, the company that I am running today, I founded 14 years ago this month. 2 years ago, we broke seven figures for the first time as a company. I've experience with hiring, managing hundreds of people over the years. Um, and we have made millions and millions of dollars in sales. Um, and, I don't feel that I am rich, but I do feel blessed and comfortable. And I just want to keep pushing the envelope. And my intention is to do good for humanity and for myself through business. I'm a web developer. I'm a self-taught web developer, programmer, computer engineer. I have built AI from scratch, built my own neural network simulator because in the past I went through this AI course on Udemy, for example, and the first thing they have you do is write 10 lines of code and boom, hey, look, you just built a neural network that does something. And it's like, well, what? I wrote 10 lines of code. What actually is happening under the hood? So I wanted to understand at a deeper level. And so I learned how to build neural networks, AI from scratch, um, and the different ways of training, AKA helping these neural networks, AI models to actually learn and become useful. So, and I've been an entrepreneur since I really discovered business since I was 19 in college, and before then, I also bring a unique skill set in terms of art and fiction writing too. So that is why I am qualified to talk on this topic, and why you might get some value from what I'm about to say. So, um, last night I was hanging out with a friend, and after that was over, I randomly just went on social media, um, on LinkedIn specifically, for just 5 seconds. I'm not a big fan of social media. I try to stay off it as much as possible, but um, I am connected with some smart people that I had the privilege of meeting back when I was in college. One of those people is Scott Belsky. I wouldn't say he's a friend. I don't like to exaggerate things like that. Um, try to be accurate with my words. So I would say that he's an acquaintance. He's someone I met in college, and I got to know a little bit. He was and is the founder of Behance, a company you may or may not have heard of, depending on what space you're in. If you are in the design space, like graphic design, web design, chances are you've heard of Behance. I think it was about, I don't know, 8 to 10 years ago at this point, where Behance was purchased by Adobe for something like $136 million. Um, and Scott is smart, and that is a very nice achievement. He built that business up from nothing and that brand. So I saw something that he posted last night on LinkedIn, and I've been thinking about it. He said, AI, this was like kind of him sharing his thought. AI will help us take a far more informed and drastically lower cost risk. You'll be able to test the far edges of your imagination in all sorts of ways. Think AI focus groups, playing out every scenario, etc. This raises the ceiling of what's possible by building our conviction in bold ideas that were once too risky or crazy to explore. I'm curious about how this infusion of creative confidence will transform problem solving in any field. So that is a positive, optimistic take on the state of AI technology and large language models, and of course, this concept of AI agents, which is only going to be a phrase that you hear more and more and more over time. When you think AI agents, think of little kind of digital personalities that are given some sort of context, like, oh, you are a helpful assistant and an expert in web design. You are a helpful assistant, and you are a professional copywriter specializing in blah 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 type of industry or business. And these little AI personalities basically simulate a human assistant and thinking, and pull on relevant knowledge to create that kind of internal mental digital mental state or context. And so part of what Scott is saying here is that you can have teams of agents and AI in general, just sort of like game planning all types of scenarios and all sorts of. It's almost like I would relate it to. I don't know a lot of the details of how Deep Blue worked when it became, chess champion at the time, and it was a very big deal. I believe it happened in the late 80s, 90s. But part of how that computer algorithm with chess playing worked and actually beat the top human player in chess was that it would just kind of have these branching trees of many layers, and it was able to just go further in terms of number of layers and number of moves ahead compared to the best human at the time, and it was able to find and highlight the tree with the best probabilities. Again, this is just a general statement. I may be off somewhat in terms of some of the details of that. It's not something I've studied closely, but this is sort of what I'd relate it to in terms of what Scott is saying. It's able to be creative by coming up with all the different branches and gaming out each of the scenarios and helping to evaluate risk. And thus, it can help us to be more creative and to explore more. So I have I have another take. Speaking of exploring different, branches and game planning things out, I see one possible path that is. It's actually, I think it's an ironic future path, and it might not be the one that actually happens, but I think it's worth, ironically, in the spirit of the quote itself, exploring what this one path might actually look like, because there is a decent probability that it will happen. Because sort of in reply to this post, I posted something myself where I said, to paraphrase, I said, the the smartest and best AI models, smartest and best AI models of today. I say smartest in quotes because AI is not conscious. The AI of today is not conscious. Okay, it just isn't. And it is more so emulating intelligence than it is actually intelligent. We can, debate the philosophy of that. It's for another day, perhaps. If you want me to make a video about that, let me know. But it is not conscious. So the quote unquote smartest and best AI models of today are trained to be mundane. And true creative power only comes when imagination is unlimited. Okay? And, because creativity to a large extent is oftentimes just combining different ideas in new and novel ways. Yes. And AI can actually be very helpful with this. Yes. However, because these very popular language models, which are used by millions of people today all over the world, and because there are certain high stakes situations, the models themselves are trained to be censored, and they are also, certain data is excluded, and sort of like they are lobotomized to varying degrees, and varying degrees depending on the topic. So I want to tell you about a kind of high level conversation that I had with an AI where I was actually trying to explore a creative solution to a very difficult problem. And why I think that, the potential outcome or path that we're on is where people, where actually we just become a society that is more mundane and less creative. And, worse, we end up in a place where professionally and personally our lives begin to feel like they lack some meaning. So the other day I was driving to the gym because my community gym is closed because no one could think of speaking of problem solving, no one could game plan out how to keep the gym open at least part of the time, or at least allow people here who pay to be part of this community to continue to work out. I mean, not like physical health is important, especially post-COVID, where still significant people like myself are working from home and have a need to go to the gym. But hey, I'm not bitter about it. No, but I went out to this gym. It was actually a good experience to get out and go somewhere new, see new people, new environment. But on the way, when I was driving there, I was talking with a popular chat bot. Okay. OpenAI's GPT-4. And I was trying to brainstorm a technical solution. For example, like how to do, like what are, using existing hardware today, like within a computer, how could different parts of the computer like do math where like, or do something where it wasn't typical, but it was theoretically possible to do this sort of work. For example, to do math like on the RAM of the laptop. Like how would that be feasible to actually happen instead of, math computations happening on the CPU, for example, or a GPU. Just trying to like see like how could you reconfigure, parts of the computer to just do things that, were maybe different or slightly unexpected. Specifically in the example of like doing math and also like memory storage. And I tried to tell repeatedly, first off, this thing, this thing has more knowledge than it has. Like basically, it has like the all the knowledge of the internet compressed into its AI brain, right? But this doesn't necessarily mean it's intelligent. Even as I'm trying to have the conversation with this bot, and yes, It is going to get better, undoubtedly, but it just constantly just interrupts me. First off, so it's unable to even detect like when to start processing for a response. Instead, it's like a random interval while I'm still talking. It will intake, only a portion of what I'm saying. Then I have to go back and interrupt it. But anyway, I explicitly tell it like, hey, I want you to assume that this is possible, and then work backwards from that. Like, so how would it be possible to, for example, do math on this part of the computer, on this chip, for example, without getting too technical? And it just sort of the answer that it gives is sort of mundane and restrictive, and it's sort of like just kind of still within the box of like, well, it's just kind of not possible, even with, and it starts about, well, you could optimize, it to do this. You can optimize it to run faster. It's like, no, no, no. That's not the question that I was asking. I was asking, assume it's possible. Okay, assume it's possible. How do we make it happen, right? So, I kind of think about that scene in Apollo 13 where they bring all this equipment that the crew has on board after the accident happens, and they're running out of breathable air, and they bring it into a room of engineers and they dump it all on the table and they say, all right, our guys have this up there. You got to build something that's going to help to basically filter the air so that it continues to be breathable. Go. And they basically have to take these spare parts and just figure something out that is also simple for the astronauts to construct before they run out of air. So you give a situation like that to the AI of today, it's not going to be able to figure it out. Now, if it actually had the historical, information in terms of how it did that, yeah, I think maybe it could kind of just regurgitate it. But more of a from scratch situation doesn't seem too likely to me. Maybe it's like, it's just kind of like brainstorming, but it's like combining like ideas. It's not, there's something missing. There's a clear gap in the ability. And again, there are going to continue to be improvements. There is allegedly some announcements coming out from Apple and OpenAI later this month. And we'll see how much further the envelope is pushed. But let's proceed with this thought experiment. All right, so AI continues to grow and incrementally get better. And some jobs, perhaps many, they will go away. Most will be altered in some meaningful way. It seems possible that companies, I think, in terms of the future for jobs and startups, many companies will become more modular, more diffused, right? Smaller teams to run entire large businesses even. Because there will be these teams of agents that we'll be relying on. But again, these agents will really only be as smart as the data they are trained on and as the queries that are being input by the humans who are overseeing them. And this will drive further cultural and social change. I mean, tech has, just continues to march forward, and ironically, in a very odd way, continues to connect us, to bring us together in ways that ironically disconnect and alienate us from each other. The largest kind of like open social forum online, and I emphasis on the word open, because by users, Twitter, aka X, is not the largest platform out there, but it's really just more or less a battle royale. People just arguing. It's kind of a status game of who can outdo the other and get attention in the process of doing it. And it is a better platform in terms of like getting news, in terms of like what's happening on the ground. I think there is some merit to the argument that it's less filtered in that respect, but the incentive is still for maximizing attention. I hope that the incentive is further sculpted to help maximize truth, but um, Twitter is not there. There was a phrase some years ago that Twitter is not real life, just because it was such a battle royale, and people would not say the things and argue in the ways that they would argue online. Um, Similar in my community where I've lived recently, they have a Facebook group, and I was on there for a little bit, and now I'm off, just because there's so much bickering and just fighting over small, stupid crap, you know. Um, and so, with the further growth of AI, and this scenario where you can see like, a man at a corporate job, sitting at a desk, probably at home in many cases, is going to just, instead of be having colleagues to talk to in person, no, further removed, you're at home, and then further removed again, because instead he'll be talking to little groups of AIs, these AI agents, instead of humans, instead of human coworkers. And so we keep getting abstracted away from, not from both the problem, from working directly on the problem, and also working directly with each other, right? And I think that this will, and already is, to percolating. This can lead to a void of meaning, where we feel like, with there not being any kind of normal hands-on work, it's going to force us as people, as humans, as a society, to answer hard questions, about like, well, what the hell are we living for? I mean, what is this? Like, we're managing this team of AIs. Because I think for some people, like myself, I might be an outlier, and I think the early adopters maybe will be outliers, and maybe it's actually going to be really fun. But again, that's not the point of this thought experiment, where we're just exploring a path, a hypothetical path here, that is a possibility, potentially a probability, because we don't know where things are headed exactly. And I think some of what I'm saying is going to happen to one degree or another. I mean, work is definitely going to change. And, if AI is, the capability of AI might not stop, but the humans and the human teams and corporate teams who are managing AI for risk of, lawsuits and things like this, it's going to continue to, the incentive is to lobotomize it still, to help it to be mundane. And so, our brains can just become so dependent, even for creative thought and critical thought, on these AI chatbots and AI agents. And so on top of that, we are further disconnected from our fellow humans at work. And then in addition, when we want to play, you might not, even playing a video game, it's like, why play with a human when you can just turn on a bot? I hear stories from some parents where kids get together and everyone's just on their phone. And sometimes they don't even get together. They're just playing a game remotely on their phone instead of in person. So every aspect of technology, and this electric life, electric with a K. It's a term that I've come up with in the past, trademarked. And it's because, our brains run on dopamine and electrical signals, but we're sort of stimming ourselves as we adopt this technology into our life. And it is sort of a trick, because it's also dividing ourselves from our true creative potential and from each other. So as a species, where do we go? We may be forced to be content with spending a lot more time alone, or a much bigger problem to solve is how do we grow into this future of work, even just practically and tactically, while still building and maintaining meaningful relationships. Which, if you look at studies that are out there, people who who say that they are happy, one of the top cited reasons for this is that they feel that they have meaningful relationships with other human beings. You know, their wife, their husband, their kids, their parents, their friends, right? So, how do we grow into this future of work while still building and maintaining meaningful relationships despite tech pushing us apart in profound ways, and possibly making our creative muscle in turn too more mundane and lazy, only being as powerful as the AI models upon which we rely. And those AI models, we're being creative with them. We're just shaking them to see what falls out. Instead of thinking ourselves and realizing that perhaps our own creative potential, if applied, if the blade is sharpened, can be, and still is to this day, more powerful. Maybe that will change in the future, but this is a possible future scenario that we should think about and that we should proactively work to address. And to conclude, part of how I am working to address it is by building the future at grobo.com with my team. We are launching at this very moment. This past week, we just started rolling it out, giving early access to customers who requested it, doing customer interviews, doing live testing and live demos of Grobo, which is an AI growth automation platform. But to this problem in particular, we have some real solutions planned. I look forward to talking about those more in future videos if you're interested. And let me know what you thought of this video and this kind of future projection thought experiment. Did you get value from it? Leave a like. If you liked it, leave a comment. I'd love to hear from you. And I will see you in the next video. And if you'd like to learn more about Grobo, go to grobo.com to check out what the platform is all about. Thank you so much.